Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Spiritism Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to host this live talk today by Claudio Filho, who will be talking about the subject, Are We Going Backwards? Let's all give Claudio a very warm welcome. And before he starts his presentation, allow me to introduce him. Claudio Filho is a dad of two, a technology enthusiast, and has been studying Spiritism since 2010. He is an active member of the California Spiritist Association and Nosso Spiritist Society. Please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Claudio has reserved time to address your comments and questions once he concludes his presentation. Hi, Claudio. It's great to see you.
Hi, Peter. Nice seeing you again. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here and to be able to deliver this presentation to you guys. I hope you enjoy. All right. So that is a question that always comes to our mind. Are we going backwards? There's so much going on in our world right now. And when you start looking into environmental issues, there's this polarization happening not only in the U.S. but everywhere else. Economic inequality. There's a lot of dependency on technology. There's a huge mental health crisis, erosion of trust. You have wars happening in Ukraine and in the Middle East. So are we really moving forward or are we going backwards? So before I answer that question to you guys, I want to navigate you through what the world was a few years ago. And then maybe we can get to a conclusion. Are we going backwards or are we moving forward? So here's a picture that was taken on a factory in Macon, Georgia in 1909. And along with the picture, there's the scripture that says, many youngsters here, some boys were so small they had to climb up on the spinning frame to mend the broken thread and put the empty bobbins. So obviously, this was a factory that would manufacture some sort of like textile things. And as you can see, those are what 8 to 10-year-olds back in 1909 here in the U.S. in Georgia. That's how life was a century ago, roughly. Here's another picture. This is a little later in 1956, the years that my parents were born. And as you can see, there's a separate water fountain for colored people and white people. Same thing, different entrances like on this ice cream parlor for white people and non-white people. So that's the world that we used to live in 1956, almost 70 years ago, right? Here's another picture, and we have one that is a little older. This is from 1946. A doctor on an advertisement is smoking cigarette and telling doctors to smoke cigarette. That was 1946. And then on the right side, we have a picture of an airplane, and this is in the 80s. So as you can see, a mother smoking right over her baby. And another picture in the bottom here where we have this parent possibly spanking his child. That was also back in the 80s, 90s, right? So I was part of that generation. I was born in the 80s and I lived through that. It was part of the culture. Many parents would take that approach. You would go to, not so long ago in the 90s, you would go to restaurants and people would just be smoking while you're trying to enjoy your meal. So that was the world that we were living 20, 30 years ago, right? So I can tell you, we came a long way from that. Like we live in a completely different world today. But you might think, okay, so you're telling me things are changing, but what does Spiritism says about that, right? We're going to get to that. And I also want to point another fact. So yesterday, as I was preparing this presentation, I I was just searching for news, and I stumbled upon like those three pieces of news. So tell me which one sticks out for you. So we have some news about a plane crash. We have some news about some mystery disease. And then we have this other piece of news that says a man saved a bunch of animals. But which one, as you're watching this presentation right now, really calls your attention? If you are like most people, you probably went to the plane crash or this new disease, right? So there is this study that was conducted in 2019 about uh, how the news impact our lives, and this study was conducted by the National Academy of Sciences here in the U.S. And they interviewed more than 1,000 people across 17 countries, and they concluded that on average, people pay more attention to negative news than positive news. So it's not me just saying this, but it's really we are more we tend to pay more attention to what things that are negative than positive. So and that has a huge impact in the way we perceive the world, because if the newspapers would sell more ads and things by providing bad news, they will do that if that is more lucrative for them, right? And since we are more biased into negativity than positivity, then we might have this perception that things are getting worse and not getting better. And there's a third point too, which is the internet effect, right? So before internet, if you want to learn about something, you would go either to like your school or your college, or maybe you might go to your library and start reading about a certain topic that you might be interested in. But then in the, I would say, early 90s, internet started. And then I would say by the late 90s, early thousands, internet was widespread, right? And then at that point, you started to have instant access to a vast amount of information right in the palm of your hand. And then a little later on, I would say in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, we started to have social media. And then we started spreading news to all your friends, all your family. So sometimes even when you don't want to read news or bad things, as you're browsing through your Facebook, or maybe you're using your WhatsApp app, somebody shared with you like a piece of news that might not have what you want, right? So you're kind of forced to go through that through social media. And again, you have mobile devices that are in your hand. You have access to information all the time. And in the top of that, you have some platforms like Google News or Apple News and others that have algorithms running on the background. And those algorithms train on what you were into, right? So as you click on different topics and different things, you will learn what are your preferences, and then it will provide you with more news and data that are related to what you're typically used to. So you have something that is giving you what theoretically you want, and so you have even more stuff in your hand. So it's a very difficult scenario. How do we get out of that cycle, right? So let me talk a little bit about Spiritism now. So in the Spiritist book, one of the chapters of the Spiritist book, it's called the Law of Progress, and we have two questions that I'm going to highlight here. And one of them is the question 784 that asks, the perversity of humankind is immense. It seems that human beings are regressing rather than advancing, at least in terms of morality. And then the spirits got back to us right in our face and say, you're wrong. Look at the human race as a whole. You see that it is advancing. It has arrived at a clear perception of what is evil and witness the reform of some kind of abuse every day. An excess of weakness is required to show the need for good and the need for reforms. So if you look at throughout history, you always notice we have some really dark times, right? Like times that happen in our history that bad things happen. And I'm not saying they don't happen, they do happen. Uh, even that one of the first pictures I have shown of a boy working on that factory, that is very sad. And unfortunately, this probably still happens in the world today, but the scale of that is much smaller than what it was back in 1909. Talking to my family, like my father-in-law, he told me he started working when he was like 5 years old. His dad had a business, so he was there working with his dad. And by 11 years old, he was working full time. So he was born in the 50s as well, right? So so back in the 50s, he was working full time at 11 years old. I am in my 40s. I started working quite early too. I started working full time when I was 16 years old. And I don't see my son or my daughter to be working full time at that age anymore, right? So we are progressing, and so and if you go back to your family, like how comfortable your family used to live, like some of the facilities that we have today, we are advancing forward. There's so much new things and good things that are happening that sometimes we get overshadowed by the news and this perception that things are going bad. Let's move to the next question here, which is question 785. What is the greatest obstacle to progress? So the answer is very, very long. So I sort of summarize here just so you guys don't keep me reading it. So, and according to the spirits, what really blocks our progress is our pride and selfishness. And what happens is, as we are experiencing things and as we are evolving intellectually, there is we tend to really increase our pride and selfishness, unfortunately. But eventually, that changes and leads to a moral enlightenment and realization that true happiness lies beyond all our material pleasures. So it is really a way for us. We need to go through that process. So if you look into history and modernization, even let's take the moral side, moral part to the side. If you look into the Industrial Revolution, which that picture was part of it, and we are sort of like still going through like a more like technological revolution right now, especially with AI and other things. Um, on the beginning, things tend to be a little bad until like we realize, oh my God, like we're doing some advancements in so many areas, but maybe we are hurting uh, our world, we're hurting our natural resources. So then we shift into a different position where we pay more attention not only to our development, but also like the surroundings and how does that development affect everyone else around us. So that's something that humans are very good at. So I want to bring to you guys here a couple different technological or recent human advancements. So when you come to technology, I mean, we have a revolutionized healthcare, we have communication, education, transportation. If you think about 100 years ago, if you needed to visit your family members in some other, let's say if I live in the West Coast, if I had family members living in the East Coast, it was a really long train ride. We're talking about days riding the train to go from the West Coast to the East Coast. If you want to go to a different continent, I mean, airplanes were starting roughly 100 years ago, but still, like, it was very, very expensive. Only the uber rich could use an airplane. There's so many different advancements, even, moving within your city and going to work. It was a different world. Now we have the comfort of our cars. You can take a very decent airplane ride to wherever you want to go. There's also like this social awareness. a lot of activism for gender equality, racial justice. Uh, we're more accepting of people that might be in a different health condition, maybe people in the spectrum. In the past, those people were not respected, and now there's this awareness increase for different people. We have racial justice, LGBTQ plus rights, and we are really moving forward toward a more inclusive society. And if you like it or not, that's the path that we're going, and we will continue that, even though sometimes we feel like we're going backwards in some areas, right? Like I said, sometimes we take a step back to give to front, right? We have environmental initiatives. We're combating climate change. We have way more usage of renewable energy, not only by the government, but a lot of people are installing solar panels or other alternatives, uh, types of like electricity and all that. We have medical breakthrough. We just went through a pandemic, and very, very quickly, we came up with a vaccine that helped us navigate through that pandemic, right? So there's so much advancement in there. It's hard to not see that. Um, some more like global connectivity. The internet, even though like it has like a bad side, which I sort of illustrated in the previous slide, but there's so many pluses with internet and global connectivity. Now pretty much the entire world, there's a new initiative with like satellite internet, that if you're in a ship in the middle of the ocean, you have access to good and reliable internet no matter where you are. So everyone across the world is getting access to internet. And not only that, as soon as you get access to the internet, you have access to data that you maybe was not exposed to, or maybe you would rely on your local news to give you that information. But now you can search on your own. There's also a new wave of mental health support, recognition that people need support for their mental health. We have innovation in education. So I have a 1 year old and a 5 year old. 5 year old is going to kindergarten right now, and it's amazing like the amount of resources they get for learning. And back in my days, I would have a book to read, or the teacher would go and draw pictures and stuff. Now they have videos, they have more resources, they have little apps that you can that will help you with math and learning how to read. And there's this huge involvement on the community. So we have many different initiatives, even through the internet. So if you don't know, if you would like to volunteer, you can go to the internet. You're going to find a website that can point you to volunteering activities. So if you want to help, you have all the resources available to go and help as much as you want, right? So we have a slew of different pieces of information here that you can use, and that really point to a better world right now. And if you don't believe in what I'm saying, you can come to this website here. So I want to present to you guys. It's a website called Our World in Data. So I'm a very data driven person. I'm in the Silicon Valley here in California, and so you might not believe what I just said, but what I'm going to show you here now are pieces of data that I grabbed from this website that really show how we are advancing compared to a few years back, right? So the first one that I want to share with you guys. So this is a graph that shows the sheer number of people living in extreme poverty. So in extreme poverty are people that are living with less than $2.15 a day. So unfortunately, we still have almost 700 million people living without $2.15 per day. That's still like a huge number. But if you compare that number from 1990, in 1990, we had almost 3 times the amount of people living under those conditions, right? So as you can see, there is a huge decline, and it's very recent, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. People, we had 3x the amount of people living in that condition, which again, we still have a lot work to do. We still have to help those people to get out of the situation, help those countries by providing resources for them to grow on their own, to not cause dependency and all that. But it is a huge improvement if you compare where we were in 1990 and where we are today. Here is another one. So, and I really like to see this graph here because it shows beyond what we're seeing here. So this is an index from 0 to 1, and this, it's like a freedom index, right? So it shows in which extent people are free from forced labor, have property rights, enjoy the freedoms of movement and religion. And again, the closer you are to 1, the better you are, and the closer you are to 0, the less freedom you have. And as you can see here, from and this started to be recorded in the 1800th century, so it has a lot of data. And as you can see, on average, it always goes up, right? It always goes up. And as you can see, if we get close to where we are here, it might be a little hard to see. You notice sometimes there are deeps, right? As you know, in many parts of this graph, sometimes it goes down and then it goes up again. And I think that's what we experience. And sometimes when we have that perception that things are going bad, we are in this valley here, right? We're looking, maybe we're going through that phase where things are going a little worse, but on average and across time, things tend to go back into the right position again. So sometimes if you feel like you're being consumed, or bad things are happening, just rest assured that it's just for a little period of time, and we're gonna go back up again. And this is, I mean, it's not me telling, it's the data telling us, right? Okay, so here's another one, life expectancy. So in the 1950s, and I'm going to take the world. So as you can see here, it presents data with continents, but there's also like the world. In 1950s, like the world average life expectancy was 46 years. So I would be very close to the end of my life if I was the average man living in the 50s. But now, and data from 2023, that average from the world went from 46 years to 73 years. That's like over a 60% increase in life expectancy. And if you take this to the next, so we're talking about 7 years, right? So you can imagine in the next 7 years, our life expectancy should go even higher than what it is right now, right? It might not grow in the same rate, but if you look at this curve here, we can predict where we're going to be. It's pretty, as you can see, it's pretty predictable. It follows a certain angle there, right? So, and again, you can see the same thing here. Sometimes we have like some deeps. And this one here is pretty obvious, is when we had the pandemic, right? So during that short period of time, the life expectancy went down, but eventually it went back up to the same direction. Number of people without access to electricity. Again, as you can see, we had this is a much more recent piece of data. So in 2000, we had roughly almost like 1.3 billion people without access to electricity. And then now we're talking about a billion people. It's still a lot. I mean, the period of time that we're looking at this data is much shorter, but as you can see, we have been improving the access to electricity. And if it was not by the usage of renewables and solar panels and solar farms and wind farms and all that, we wouldn't get there. So doing better for the environment also help us to get to these conditions. Because I mean, if you think about someone that lives in the middle of the desert, it's very costly to have a power plant there, maybe driven by gas um, or coal, right? It's very expensive to have a big power plant, but to install solar panels or wind farms, it's fairly easy. So, as we evolve with technology, we not only do better for the environment, but also we live more comfortably. So that's the whole idea. Um, and then the last one that I'm going to share, a piece of data: people share of people using solid fuels as main cooking fuel. So I'm not sure if you know this, but solid fuels, when used for cooking, is one of the main reasons why some populations have respiratory diseases, because they might cook that inside of their house. So they might be using wood or other resources or charcoal to cook inside of their house. They might not have like proper ventilation. So that leads to a lot of like different diseases and health conditions. And as you can see here, there's a pretty steep decline, and not everywhere. We still have, again, a lot of work to do in several different continents in different areas, but there's a huge decline from and this is 1980s, so it's 40 plus years ago, right? Um, so showing again another indicator that we're moving towards the right direction. So, when you start thinking about that, what can you do in your day-to-day life to really um, enjoy your days, enjoy your family, and really reduce the negativity that lives around us, right? I remember, like, during the pandemic, I was very concerned about the virus. I had my son back then was only a 1 year old, so I was very concerned about like how this will affect my family. We were isolating, like just bunkering inside of our house, and I was very concerned about the whole situation. And every time I would pick up my phone and look at the news, I only see green news, right? To the point that I decided I'm gonna stop watching the news. So what I decided to do, instead of like watching the news, I basically I love learning about languages. So I found this app that I could learn about like French. So I started learning French. So every time I had the urge to read the news, I basically switched my mindset and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna start learning French." And I did that. I did that for 2 years, and I'm still doing that today. I'm learning Italian now, but uh, so you can do certain things to change your mind and change your habits, right? And one of them is, how can we be more optimistic, right? So there's this book from Tali Sharot, and it's called The Optimist Bias. And if you read the book, the conclusion that you're going to come out of the book is uh, being more optimistic will help improve your health. So it will improve your physical health. You're going to have a stronger immune system. And this is based on research. It's not like just her opinion, right? You have an increased chance of like success. So people that believe on something, they tend to be more successful. So imagine if you're at work and you're going through some we're going through like a bad economic phase right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. Uh, the economy is growing very slowly, but if you don't believe like you can change that situation, it's very rare that's going to happen, right? So being more optimistic that you can uh, do whatever you want will increase the rate of success, because if you don't believe, you're not going to do it. Uh, it overall enhances your well-being. You're going to have more satisfaction in your life. You're going to have more happiness, and you're going to be more resilient too. So you're going to learn how to cope with stress and how to recover from some setbacks that you might have. And here is a phrase from this American philosopher. His name is Noam Chomsky. So, optimism is a strategy for making a better future, because unless you believe that the future can be better, you're unlikely to step up and take responsibility to make so. So, when we see things that are going bad, it's our responsibility to do something to make that better. So, if there's injustice, or if some bad situation is happening, we should take on us to go and change that. So we shouldn't depend on, like, sometimes we blame too much the government, we blame too much others, and there's always something that we as individuals can do. So look for up take that as an opportunity for you to engage and help others, regardless where they are. I mean, like I said, the internet brings us the possibility to help beyond our frontiers, right? So you can donate, you can help, and help can happen everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. So you can help at your school, like in my case, my kids are going to public school. So you can go there and help the other parents, help the teacher. You can help your community. You can go to your most spirit centers across the US and the world. There's always some volunteering activity, maybe helping the homeless, or helping elderly in elderly care. There's so many different activities that you can engage on, and being optimistic that you can change the world. If you have that mindset, it's going to happen. And the other thing too, we tend to look into things with those negative eyes, but no matter which condition, there's always a bright side. So here are a couple of phrases there. My father died, or my son crashed my car. I am retired now, so I don't have more of my work income. But you can look into those situations with a different eye, right? So you can really, instead of like thinking my father died, you can say my father disincarnated after a very well lived life. He was happy, he was enjoying his life, and now he's enjoying his life beyond earth. He's continuing his journey outside of all the problems and things that are happening here. He lived a good life. He was a good man. That's how we should look. Even, I mean, this is a very tired condition. When someone passes away, it's, everybody surrounding that person might face some distress economically. You might face, we'll miss that person, but we should look at how that person passed away, like how, he's we as spiritists, we know life continues. It's just the earthly life that we have is just like a little blip in our eternal journey, right? So we really need to look with those eyes. But the other one here, the second one, my son crashed my car. Instead of like thinking about that, we should say, oh my God, my son has survived an accident. So I have a friend of mine, his daughter, not so long ago, crashed his car. Like, she basically was doing something wrong, and then the car hit a tree, and the tree went all the way to the middle of the car. And luckily, her and her friends, like, they're all teenagers, they all survived. And he told me exactly that. Like, he was like, I am so glad that nobody got hurt. And and that's the spirit, that's the mentality we should take, and the lessons. And I'm sure she will look into life now with a very different perspective than before. So when things like that happen to us, we need to take a step back and understand what just happened to me. Why did that happen to me? Was I not being careful enough? Was I tired? So you start questioning, and then you start looking. It seems like God gave me a new chance to live my life, right? And then the last one here, I retired and I don't have my work income anymore, but I have time to spend with my family. I can finally go and visit my granddaughters, and I can spend time with my wife, which, we were both working for all those years, and now we can spend more time together. We can have good quality time. So, it's not about just the money. Yeah, money gets you here and there, but it doesn't bring you happiness. Happiness is, at least for me, is spending time with my family. It's enjoying the conversations that I have with them, enjoying my friends, maybe having a meal together with them. So life is not about just money and all the hustle that you have on your day to day. It's really to enjoy those little moments that you have with the people that you love. So let's take this and start looking on the bright side of things. They say it never hurts your eye when you look into the bright side of things. Here's another message that I wanted to share with you. And this from a very famous doctor, Patch Adams. Uh, Robin Williams made a movie highlighting his life and how he helped kids in hospitals. So he said, at age of 18, I made up my mind to never had another bad day in my life. And I've dove in an endless sea of gratitude from which I've never emerged. So that's what we should do. We should decide when you're having a bad day, and everyone has a bad day. Um, Try to think through, like, why are you having such a bad day? Maybe you didn't sleep well, or maybe you're sick. Like, I have a little cold right now, so you will have some bad days, but not try not to like as you reflect that you're having a bad day, your attitude will change, right? So instead of like looking life with that grim attitude or with that bad attitude, as soon as you notice you're having that, and even communicating that, sometimes I do that to my wife. I'm like, I'm not having a good day today. As soon as I do that, I start paying attention to my behavior and to my mood, and then suddenly it starts changing, right? So I think that's the perspective we need to take in life. And just to summarize what I went through here today, the world, I'm answering the first question, are we going backwards? No, we're not. The world is becoming a better place, and you play a big role. So keep that going. Make that effort to make a world a even better place. Technology is here to make our life better. So it can be disruptive. It can so if we use it well, we can we can take a huge advantage of it to make our life better. Let's not let negativity take us over. Let's really work on being more positive. Surround yourself with positive people. Try to understand how positive people think. I mean, there's always like a reality check on things, but try to look into problems and things with a more positive aspect. Let's switch our habits and thoughts, like the example that I gave on, stop reading the news. So if there's something bad that happens to you every day, try to change your mindset. Try to do something different that and replace that activity with something else, right? And look for the positive things around you. So, I remember like during the pandemic, it was a very bad time, but at the same time, like my the way I was looking into it, I was working from home. I was able to see my son grow and take his first step, say the first words. So I have, even though like it was a very green time, I had this very nice image in my mind because I never in history nobody had that opportunity to be so close to their kids, right? So for me, that was a highlight of a very bad period. And and again, every time we go through some harsh time, try to take your mind out of it and see what lessons am I learning as I'm going through this bad time. So yeah, that's the message that I wanted to bring to you guys today. And I hope you have enjoyed. So we can proceed with the questions now.
Thank you, Claudio, for the reflections that you provided. Please stay tuned for our Q&A session that will start shortly after some announcements. 1. Virtual course, Introduction to Mediumship, a free virtual course for beginners. The U.S. Spiritist Federation is thrilled to invite individuals eager to explore the realm of spirit communications according to Spiritism. Check out the new course at learn.us.edu. U, sorry, learn.us, learn.spiritism.us. 2. Podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works by Joanna de Angelis. A new episode every Friday at 6 p.m., available on YouTube and Spotify. 3. A new book, Transcendence, Life in the Hereafter by Jasada Korngold. Are you curious about what lies beyond the veil of death? Join us on a profound journey of exploration as we delve into the mysteries of the afterlife with Transcendence, Life in the Hereafter, available at spiritistbooks.us. Spiritist app Be My Hope is available now on the App Store or Google Play. This app offers uplifting content on a collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. Download it now. Now available are 7 free professionally recorded Spiritist audiobooks sponsored and produced by the Spiritist Society of the Carolinas. At your own pace, listen to Allan Kardec's foundational works on YouTube at Spiritist Society Carolinas with an exclamation mark, or you can go to the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube channel. Finally, on the screen, please note there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, scan the QR code for your donation. Okay, we'll next address questions and comments from the audience, and there's still time for you to send in yours. First one from the United States Spiritist Federation. How can we remain optimistic about humanity when it seems like there are forces at work that thrive on adversity?
Yeah, that's a very very good question, Peter. And I think the way we should navigate into this is sometimes we will have things that are pulling us backwards, right? But again, if you remember some of those graphs, we're always like on average we're going up. So try not to think about the situation in this micro vision. Try to look more like in a macro state, right? Try to look sometimes like for little things, it might go bad for a little while, but on the grand scheme of things, if you look at the world as a whole, we're progressing. So I try not to concentrate much into the problem and try to concentrate on what that problem is teaching you or what lessons can you learn from that problem rather than focusing on the bad, right?
So it's like be engaged with the here and now because we have to, but don't be caught up in it excessively.
Exactly. I mean, if we the more time we spend uh just churning the negativity, it has a snowball effect, right? You
Hmm.
can see some negative people, they really they're in this spiral loop where you're just like, and you tend it's interesting because when you I have some negative people around me, and I can see that where they tend to attract other people that are like them, you know. So
Oh,
if you notice that, try to interrupt that cycle because it can be very vicious.
mhm. Okay, thank you. Next question from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Claudio, can you elaborate further on how dark moments can help us to make progress?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the spirits book and all the literature from Spiritism covers this in length. But the answer that I provided there from I believe question 789, those dark times, they teach us and they force us to change, right? So sometimes we have to go through that to one value what we have and value the good things that we have in our lives, and also to make a change to spark that reform that is so necessary to the world, right? So unfortunately, we're not evolved spirits. We're far from it. We're in that journey, and as non-evolved spirits, we have to go through some harsh times, and it's part of our life. It's part of our journey, and the more we realize that, and also we have to prepare. So when everything is good, brace yourselves because there's a chance something bad might happen. And I'm not trying to be alarmistic or anything like that, but it's just part of our journey. It's part of our and the more we learn how to cope with those situations, which will happen in several stages of our life, the easier we can navigate through that. So
Yeah, those are great. Next question. In what way does the increase of intelligence via increased standards of living, technology, etc., challenge us to do better in our relationships with one another?
yeah, I mean, intelligence. If you look into history, we had the Illuminism before we had the Industrial Revolution. We go through periods where we our intellectual will always be a little ahead of our morality, right? So it's part of the journey, and I think like the other question mentioned too, the more like on the beginning we tend to take the intelligence credit to ourselves, so we become proud and sometimes selfish about it, but we shouldn't look that way. Sometimes we're inspired to do good things, or maybe when we before we came we had I mean we all have a spiritual journey, and we have a plan, right? Before we incarnate here, we set a plan of what we're going to do, and then throughout that journey we're going to be helped by other spirits, and we're going to take maybe something that we learn outside of here and apply it and bring that here. So let's not feel so much proud of that achievement. Think as you are the vessel for advancement, right? So if we would look into things this way rather than just being proud of ourselves, I think we should be proud of working hard, proud of really doing our best. Like we should be proud of that, but not like if you have an idea that might revolutionize the world, don't be proud of that because it might not be yours. So it's
Right.
it's it's really uh, appreciating the journey, and really thinking, because if you're not if you think about like the standards of living, right? If you don't eat well, if you don't, let's say you're living in a place that is extremely cold or extremely hot, you're not going to be able to help others as well as you can. So the more we advance, the more comfort, the more, and you notice certain things happen at a certain time, and there's a progression that that it takes. So we didn't we're getting into quantum computers now, right? Like that's the next journey for technology, and but we had to go through a whole technology advancement before we get there. So it's a matter of time that moral catches up with intelligence. So
I like what you said about it's important that we see ourselves as facilitators of advancement rather than the originators, per se.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we all have brilliant ideas and things like that, no matter in which field you work. There's always like something that we will come up with, and sometimes we get like very proud of it, but again, it might be an inspiration or it might be something that you saw outside of here. Let's be proud of like our hard work, be proud of like raising kids with the right values and right morals. Like that's what we should be proud of.
Okay. All right. Thank you. This is from Yasko Arakawa. Hi, Yasko. Hi, Claudio. Good topic. Evidently, being part of the last couple of generations in the era of internet, which made available many very positive information and entertainment, How to refrain its control, almost a possession. Do we need to reach a kind of psychopathological suffering for the mindset and lifestyle change?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. I believe what Yasko said, almost as a possession, he means in the terms of it becomes an obsession of yours, right? As anything, if we do too much of one thing, we might become like a victim of that, right? So you don't want to overdo anything, right? So technology is part of it. So if you're spending all your days on your phone all the time reading news or reading or maybe playing games, that's wrong, right? We don't want to overdo it. We don't want to really because you can become dependent. I mean, there are studies out there that show, especially like younger kids. I mean, my kids, my son specifically, he loves watching TV. I mean, he could watch TV all day long if I just let him do that. So me as a parent, my role is basically not allow him to watch TV all day long. He needs to learn other things. He needs to do physical activity. He needs to do so. Me as a parent, I it's my role to regulate that, right? But as an adult, we might not have our parents anymore. We might not have maybe you have your significant other, like he or she can be that controlling agent, and sometimes like we get mad because they come back to us and say, hey, you're watching too much like stuff on your phone, or you're listening too much for your, like I'm a huge soccer fan, so you know you're listening too much for your soccer podcast. So there's always like some balance in someone that can point you to the right direction. Or even there are tools today, for instance, there's a tool on my phone that tells me like my screen time. I'm always paying attention to that. If am I increasing my screen time? So I'm always trying to keep a certain balance. So you have tools that even technology provide you to regulate how much you're exposed to it. So so yeah, use the technology for the good. Don't let the technology take over you. So you and if you cannot do this by yourself, go look for help. Right? We have mental health resources everywhere. Uh, if you don't have a significant other that can assist you there, or maybe your parents, go talk to someone that will provide you a plan and guide you through the process to disconnect yourself a little bit, or go camping, go to a place where you might not have internet access, go enjoy the nature. So so yeah, that's the because too much medicine becomes it's bad, right? So anyhow.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into traps like that. Okay, next question from the U.S. Spiritist Federation. How does our perspective as immortal spirits affect our way of looking at bad moments in the world?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we are in a long journey. Being we are This is not our first life, this isn't going to be our last life here on earth. We have to start looking at our journey as a continuous process of improvement. So anytime we're going through bad moments in the world, so wars and and you have political polarization and things like that, it affects us immensely. So I think what we can do is think about like what can you do as an individual to change that, right? Use the internet. We have this great thing called chat gpt or ai. Like if you're completely lost, you have no one to talk, that thing works. Like it gives you some good ideas and what can be done there. But think about that. Like those bad moments, it might be very severe and very bad as you're going through. But again, when you look into your journey, and there's always a lesson that you can learn. So search for what lessons you can learn as you're going through a bad period of time, because there's always something good. Maybe you have to change the way you deal with people. Maybe you have to change the way you're eating, your health habits. Maybe you have to incorporate a healthier lifestyle. So if you're going through some sort of disease, sometimes it forces you to stop doing something for a reason, right? So it's a moment that you should reflect and why am I going through that, rather than putting yourself in the situation of a victim, right? We tend to victimize ourselves, but try to reflect why am I being put into test? And remember, God doesn't want to punish us. He only gives us that load because he knows we can handle it. So doesn't think like some people might look at God and be mad. Why am I going through this? Like why God is putting me through this? Because you planned it. You can handle it. So I think that's the message that we should always think. And it's easy for me to say now because I'm not living through that, but it's if you can extract yourself from that situation and think like put yourself in a 10,000 feet and look from the top down, you might see things differently.
These are very good points. Okay, final question. In what way, actually, I think this is a, I think you've touched on this to some extent, but maybe talk a little further. In what way should we be concerned about the suggested dangers of technological advancement? Are these fears exaggerated?
Yeah, sometimes they can be real. Like
Mhm.
I work with technology, and a lot of people ask me like, is AI gonna replace my job?
Mm,
And there might be a chance, but what happens is if you're fearing that AI might take your job, you should be working on learning something else. Like go do something else. I mean, it's an opportunity again for you to learn something new or to really advance yourself. So if you're in this position where we're comfortable and you're not learning anything new, like that's not a good position to be. We're here to be in a constant learning process, right? So yeah, technology advancement can be scary and can really affect us. If you think about like all the factories and the equipment that we have in the factories, it does replace humans. But at the same time, if you look in the past, we had way more accidents every day. We had all sorts of like injuries. You had bad work conditions, like no protection gear, smog. Like there's a lot of like different things. So it might not be good for humans to be in that situation. It's better for a factory, or sorry, for a machine to do that job, right? So it's not like you're replacing humans with machines. You're just giving humans an opportunity to do something that is less harsh. That so if you're fearing, like I said, that technology might take over your job, go do something, go learn something new. Like that's an opportunity that you're having right now to not affect. But if you're just sitting down on your couch, you still want to do the same thing every day, then yeah, that's going to be a problem.
All right. Well, thank you, Claudio. Those are great reflections. And thank you, everyone who has sponsored our show and for today's talk. We appreciate everyone who follows us every week. Next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, don't miss our next live with Gustavo Severo. The subject is Parable of the Good Samaritan. Claudio, before we close this program, can you please say the final prayer?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and bring you guys this topic of the day. Let's take this to our week. Let's reflect on how does the news and everything else affect our lives in our day to day. How can you and I do better for the world, do better for our neighbors? What things can we do today to really impact the surroundings of where we live? How can we make everyone's lives better? I think it's a reflection that we should have every day. So we thank the spirits and we ask them to help us and to guide us through that process, to give us good suggestion and ideas in how to accomplish that and how to become better every day. And so be it.